Fifth part of Lesson 01 from the online philosophy course by Professor Olavo de Carvalho on March 14, 2009. What does Saint Augustine do? Saint Augustine is trying to answer certain philosophical problems, but he realizes that there is an intermediary between himself and the lofty philosophical questions he is addressing. In other words, he is not approaching these philosophical concepts as an angel would look at Platonic ideas. He is a real human being, and he knows that between this real human being and the universal ideas of philosophy, there is a gap. We do not have direct knowledge of these universal ideas as God does or as the angels do. In reality, we only have knowledge of concrete and immediate things, which are part of our lives and make up the fabric of our daily experience, and we seek behind them universal concepts that articulate and explain them. These universal concepts, in turn, reach us only in an obscure and confused manner, as in a dark mirror, as the Apostle Paul said. Augustine therefore notices that his intelligence does not seem to be a completely suitable organ for those great questions he is posing, and he wonders what separates him from the universal intelligence capable of grasping these great realities more clearly and distinctly. He then realizes that what hinders him, what stands in between, like an opaque mirror, is his own personality. This personality is full of fears, prejudices, and self-deception, and he understands that he needs to clean this mirror before he can see anything clearly. So, he undertakes the great work that is Confessions. Confessions is a literary genre that he invents. Not that autobiographies did not exist before. For those interested, I recommend the classic work by George Misch, A History of Autobiography in Antiquity. Before Augustine, there were several autobiographical genres, but these genres do not bring us the presence of a real person as Confessions does. In Egypt, for example, a narrative of a pharaoh's life was buried with him, but this narrative only displayed the great deeds he had accomplished as a head of state and the virtues he believed himself to embody because that was the image he wanted to present to the gods. His errors, sins, shames, and all the embarrassing moments he experienced in life were suppressed. And only the beautiful part appeared. Similarly, Greco-Roman autobiographies were the autobiographies of public figures, recounting the public lives of Julius Caesar or Marcus Tullius Cicero, for example, and in them, there is none of the personal voice that you observe in Confessions by Saint Augustine. On the other hand, it is clear that Confessions is not just an autobiographical book. Confessions is a book of the highest quality philosophy. And the secret is that Augustine realized the root of philosophical knowledge lies in self-knowledge, taken in the sense of Christian confession. You do not go to confession to recount the great things you have done, but to confess precisely what you would never tell in public, and that is exactly what Saint Augustine does in public. Not in detail, because he did not want to scandalize anyone, nor as a depressing masochistic speculation, but with the sincerity of someone who remembers, for instance, that even as a baby in the cradle, he had bad thoughts and wished harm upon his mother. That is, he goes back to the root of his earliest experiences and confesses. Here, then, there are three aspects. First, the philosophical knowledge he aspires to. Second, the real state of concrete individuality, with all its misery, ignorance, forgetfulness, self-deception, etc. Third, and between the two, there is the narrative, which is made, in turn, before a fourth character, the omniscient observer, the omniscient listener to whom Augustine reveals himself. However, since this observer is God himself, Augustine knows he is not revealing anything new. He knows that what he recounts in his autobiography, although never told to anyone, is not entirely unknown. Why? Because it is something that exists in reality, and reality, taken as a whole, is what is in the mind of God. Is what God knows. When we do not know the answer to a question, we say that only God knows, meaning that the answer is not part of our knowledge but is only part of reality, and therefore, it is known only by him in whom knowledge and reality are not distinct. Reality, in its totality, is what? It is the intelligence of God, the memory of God, etc. As Augustine recounts his life to this omniscient listener, he discovers things he had not perceived before because they were things that existed only in reality and not in his consciousness. This means that the individual who tells his life to God is, in fact, asking God to reveal his life to himself. Augustine speaks with God not in the sense of telling him anything new, but as one who says, "Reveal my life to me. You know more than I do, you saw what I thought, you saw what I hid, you saw my secrets, you know everything about me, so I tell the little piece that I know, and you show me the complete picture." This confrontation between individual experience and the omniscient observer is the very foundation of philosophy. This is exactly what Socrates himself did. He placed real-life questions, his own and those of his interlocutors, before divine intelligence and allowed that divine intelligence to show him and others what they had not perceived initially. They eventually discovered that their cognitive content was not limited to what was in their consciousness at a given moment, but that there existed an entire infinite reservoir of knowledge to which they had access through sincere self-questioning. Now, this entire part of self-investigation is completely excluded from philosophy today. If you enter a philosophy department and say that you are there in search of self-knowledge, everyone will laugh at you and send you to a self-help group, psychotherapy, or a priest, a rabbi, or something like that. "We are not here to solve your personal problems," they will say. But what kind of philosophy can we obtain if we immediately disregard the concrete person who is seeking knowledge? What remains can only be a theatrical performance, the execution of a bureaucratic role determined by circumstances external to the philosophical process itself. In the Anglo-Saxon world, for example, which is shaped 60 or 70% by so-called analytic philosophy, metaphysical questions are completely excluded from philosophy and must be investigated in the religion department, in psychotherapy groups, or mystical sections. Here in the US, a clairvoyant advertises as a metaphysician, and the work of a fortune teller, which is an entirely respectable profession but has nothing to do with philosophy, is also called metaphysics. This is an extreme case of defining the philosophical field through an external bureaucratic tradition, and, of course, such an approach will never produce a good philosophy. When something valuable does emerge, it is because some individual was strong enough to overcome the limitations of the bureaucratic system, do what he believed should be done, and ignore any complaints. Eric Voegelin or Eugen Rosenstock did not care if someone did not understand what they were doing. In Brazil, this situation is even worse due to the dominance of a certain political orthodoxy in our universities, something so shallow, tacky, and stupid that it does not even deserve comment. I still recall, regarding this, the film Elite Squad, where a slightly different opinion, one based on experience, coming from the police officer attending the class, is not refuted through a normal debate but met with shouting, a collective protest from the class. There is an atmosphere of militant enthusiasm that has absolutely nothing to do with the pursuit of knowledge, not even in the diminished sense of knowledge-seeking that characterizes the university in general. Over the past 20 or 30 years, there has been a systematic effort to destroy higher culture in Brazil, and nothing remains. In the 1950s, Brazil had 40 or 50 great writers, leading social scientists, and important philosophers like Mario Ferreira dos Santos and Vicente Ferreira da Silva. Today, we have nothing. The social situation of philosophy students in Brazil is calamitous, and that is precisely why this course was created. The fact that so many people have enrolled in this course is itself proof that the university system is failing, not only in fulfilling the highest goals of philosophical inquiry but even in its usual bureaucratic functions. I want you to understand something extremely important: if there is to be a higher culture in Brazil 20 or 30 years from now, it will be due to you and you alone.